All right, let's dive right in. Today we're talking about something huge that's happening in almost every workplace, but it's happening so quietly you might not have noticed. We're talking about the slow fade of the manager, or at least the manager as we used to know them. The power to make real decisions, it's shifting away from actual people and into these complex systems you can't even see.
So, does this sound familiar? You're in a meeting, you're trying to explain the context, the nuance, all the messy human stuff behind a project, and your boss just points to a red number on a screen. That's it. End of discussion. It's that incredibly frustrating feeling that you're not talking to a person anymore, you're talking to a dashboard. And, yep, for a lot of us, that's the new normal.
You can really see the shift right here. We've gone from a world where managers were hired for their judgment, their ability to understand context, their gut feeling, their intuition, all that human stuff. And we've traded it for a new world that runs on dashboards, metrics, and algorithms. It's a massive change from human interpretation to just pure, cold quantification.
But here's the real twist in this whole story. That power, that discretion to make a judgment call, it hasn't actually vanished, it's just moved. It's been packed up and quietly shipped somewhere else in the organization, somewhere much harder to see and a whole lot harder to argue with. So the big question is, where did it go?
Okay, let's follow the first clue. It all starts with our obsession with measuring everything. Look, organizations crave visibility. They want to track every click, every task, every minute. But this relentless drive to slap a number on everything has some really big and often pretty bad, unintended consequences.
We've all heard this one, right? It's like the first rule of business school. And, on the surface, it makes total sense. If you want to improve something, you've got to measure it. But, and this is a big but, this simple idea has a dark side. A shadow side that can actually twist your goals and make things worse. This is something called Goodhart's Law, and the idea is simple. As soon as you make a measurement your main goal, people will find a way to game it. Think about it. When hospitals were told to lower average wait times, what do you think happened? Well, they started fast-tracking all the patients with scraped knees and minor colds to get that average down. Meanwhile, the people with really serious problems, they ended up waiting even longer. The hospital hit their target, but they totally missed the entire point of a hospital.
You can see this trade-off happening all the time in things like OKRs, objectives and key results. It is super easy to measure outputs, right? How many features did we ship? But it is so much harder to measure the real outcomes. Things like, do our users trust us? Do we have a strong, cohesive team? So what gets all the attention? The easy stuff. The ability for a manager to say, hey, let's focus on the long-term health of our product, that gets thrown out the window for short-term, easy-to-count wins.
All right, now for clue number 2. This is where it gets really fascinating, because we're moving beyond just passively measuring things. Now, these automated systems are starting to actively take the wheel and make the decisions that managers used to make.
So, let's go back to our central mystery. Where did that manager's judgment actually go? Well, like we said, it didn't just puff into smoke. That authority, the power to make a call, to weigh the pros and cons, to really think about the context, it got relocated. It was lifted out of one part of the company, and it was concentrated right here. The power of discretion was taken away from hundreds, maybe thousands of individual managers making daily calls, and it was handed over to a tiny, centralized group of people, the engineers, the data scientists, the executives who design the algorithms and tell them what to do. They are the new managers, and their management style is written in Python.
This idea of an invisible cage really nails it. It originally came from the gig economy. A delivery driver is technically their own boss, right? They have freedom, but really their every move is controlled by an invisible rating system that decides what jobs they get and if they get any jobs at all. And this isn't just for gig workers anymore. That performance dashboard you have, the software that assigns you to projects, it's the same idea. It's building a cage around your choices and you can't even see the bars.
So, what's the actual human cost here? What happens to us, to our brains, when we stop making these decisions for ourselves? Well, this leads to a really worrying side effect called de-skilling.
We all have this built-in bias to just trust the machine. It's called automation bias. When a computer spits out an answer, we tend to just assume it's objective, it's rational, it's smarter than us. And it's not because we're lazy. It's because it's efficient. Why would you spend 20 minutes arguing with the system when it seems to get it right most of the time?
Think of it this way. Let's say an algorithm is 85% accurate at a task, and an experienced human is, say, 75% accurate. For the organization, it's a no-brainer. They have a massive incentive to just trust the algorithm every single time. It's predictable, you can scale it, and honestly, it's easier to blame a faulty algorithm in court than a biased manager. So the path of least resistance for everyone is just let the computer decide.
And this kicks off a really dangerous feedback loop. First, we rely on the algorithm. Then, our own judgment skills, they start to fade away, kind of like a muscle you never use. Pretty soon, we get to a point where we can't even tell when the algorithm is making a huge mistake. And that makes the whole company incredibly fragile, totally unable to cope when the system eventually fails or runs into something it's never seen before.
Okay, so let's put all these pieces together. We've seen how metrics can warp our goals, and how algorithms concentrate power and literally erode our own skills. This brings us to the final and deeply paradoxical reveal in this whole mystery.
And here it is. This is the core paradox. In this non-stop hunt for total control and total visibility through data, organizations actually develop huge blind spots. They can see all the numbers on their dashboards with perfect crystal clarity, but they become completely blind to everything that can't be put in a spreadsheet. Morale, creativity, trust, risk, the stuff that actually matters. So at the end of the day, this is the trade-off we've made. Sure, we gained a certain kind of visibility, we got more predictability, and in some ways more efficiency. But what did we lose? We lost our adaptability. We lost context. And maybe most critically, we are losing the fundamental human skill of judgment. And you have to ask yourself, was that a good trade?
And that's what I want to leave you with. When the dashboard is glowing green, but the entire company is quietly heading straight off a cliff, who is left that has the skill, the context, and most importantly, the guts to stand up and say, the system is wrong? Who's left to use real judgment? That's definitely something worth thinking about. Thanks for tuning in.